But just maybe you coming here, Mdomkolo, your presence here.
No, I'm just saying here, I'm an old resident of this area. I was a councillor in this area in 1995. And we conceptualized these areas and left them. Now they are brought down to scratches. My worry, more than the destruction of centers, is the focus on the infrastructure that is serving poor people and the working people. Because people who are working in these centers are not going to have jobs now. People who used to buy here are going to pay huge amounts of money to town to buy what they would get here for a song. And basically, you use the working class, the poor, to destroy their own infrastructure. And then they will only realize the outcome much later. That's my biggest worry.
And I'm sure you've seen, as you drive in here, a lot of community residents, hundreds of them, essentially waiting on the outskirts of the mall, waiting to move in once more as they've overpowered the police yesterday. The Gauteng Premier said yesterday that the economy is on a standstill. Is this not a state of emergency?
I think the state of disaster is strong enough to manage the situation. It is up to the people who are managing the people to deploy forces to the right places at the right time.
Shouldn't you have come a bit earlier on as leadership of the African National Congress to talk to the community?
The issue is that the leadership of the eNCA is going to all the areas. Then we're here. Yesterday there were teams that were here. I'm here today. I was somewhere else yesterday. Others in Soweto today. They were in Alex yesterday. Others in Alex today. That's what the eNCA is doing. But the reality of the matter is that leadership to protect your infrastructure should be in the hands of branches and zones. Because those are the leaders that are close to the people, talk to their own people. You will see that this crisis has not spilled over to the 7 other provinces. Not because of the police and the soldiers, but because of the structures that talk to people directly and say, no, not our infrastructure. Please don't come in here. If it can be widespread, it will not spread.
In the talks within the party, how soon will this situation be resolved?
Now, the party has not organized the situation. So you don't put time frames on issues that you have not organized.
But you are the governing party.
No, we're the governing party, but there is something called government. Now, that's why when you talk of the deployment of soldiers, I advise journalists, can you invite Minister Nosvuma Pisangakula? When you talk of intelligence, say, please talk to Ayanda Lodlo. Police talk to Begikele, because governance has the authority and the power and the forces to deal with the situation. The ANC may have the political will, but that political will not backed by the forces is not going to work much.
And just seeing all of this as it play out, some of it in the name of the former president, going forward, what image will this make for the party?
No, the issue is that if they use the name of former President Zuma for thugs to execute their own plans, I will see the difference. I can tell you that banning shopping complexes has nothing to do with Zuma. It has everything with thugs. It has everything with thugs who want to loot and reach themselves quick, use the opportunity to steal. It has nothing to do with Zuma. I worked with him for 10 years as secretary to him. And I know this destruction has nothing to do with Zuma. I'm not standing in for him, but I'm saying we must make the distinction between politics and thuggery.
And then earlier on in the week, the KZN Premier made suggestion that President Cyril Ramaphosa should pardon former President Jacob Zuma. Are those talks in the top 6?
That is premature at this point in time. You don't talk of pardons in the middle of a crisis. It's not done. It's the worst thing you can do. You try to round up thugs. You bring things to normality. Then people who want to initiate those talks can initiate those talks. But you don't do that in the middle of a crisis. Because in conflict situation, there is a term that is normally used loosely called blinking. You don't blink in the middle of a crisis.
Okay, that is the national chairperson of the African National Congress, Gwede Mantashe, just arriving at the Chris Hani mall here, where there's been looting for at least the last 2 days. The whole entire mall ransacked at this moment, accompanied by the acting mayor of Ekurhuleni and the spokesperson of the ANC, Pule Mabe.
Sure, those were strong words towards the end there, Aviwe, where Gwede Mantashe says you don't blink in the middle of a crisis. The talk of a pardon for former President Jacob Zuma, according to Gwede Mantashe, is premature. You can't be talking about that in the midst of a crisis, but also insisting that this has nothing to do with Zuma, says Gwede Mantashe, the national chairperson of the ANC, one of its top 6 leaders, saying that this has everything to do with thugs. We must make a distinction between politics and thuggery. So that debate goes on then about, whether there's still a connection between the initial seed, there was the seed of protest and grievance around the imprisonment of former President Jacob Zuma, and what we are seeing now. Is the seed linked to the fruits that we are seeing at the moment, or was another seed planted along the way, a seed of criminality that has nothing to do with the original seed that was planted around the grievances around former President Zuma?